Oh, this was certainly a surprise. I hadn't even planned on seeing Edge of Tomorrow because, honestly, when I saw the trailers for it, I said to myself, is this a prequel to Oblivion? Because that's honestly what it seems like. Not only did it have Tom Cruise in it, but also it dealt with aliens invading Earth and the humans having a hard time with it. It looked like Oblivion, right down to some similar looking machinery, except Oblivion was all white chrome and whatever, and this has more personality to it. And I liked Oblivion okay, except right off the bat, this is far superior, in my opinion. Edge of Tomorrow is directed by Doug Liman, who brought you the Bourne movies, although he also brought you Jumper. So when I heard that this was getting pretty positive reviews, I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And yeah, again, much to my surprise, I came away really liking this movie. It's not perfect, but as far as summer blockbusters go, it's definitely one of the better ones. Edge of Tomorrow is seemingly a post-apocalyptic future, but in reality, it deals with aliens called mimics invading Earth, and the humans building these mechanized these mechanized these mechanized suits armed with weapons and uh, and boosts in strength to help combat the aliens. Now, we've been at war for some time now. It never explicitly states how long, but the final invasion is set to commence on the shores of France, I believe it is. They're going to invade Europe because the aliens basically have basically populated Europe. And Tom Cruise plays the military's media relations guy. And for some reason, he's put on the front lines, and he and the rest of the army are killed immediately upon landing. However, Tom Cruise accidentally kills one of the bigger aliens called alphas, and he subsequently gets this special power that the aliens have, which is to go back, which is to basically repeat the same day over and over again, gradually learning from his mistakes and working to survive. So that's the basic gist, and he meets up with a woman named Rita, who's this war hero, played by Emily Blunt, and she basically helps him to understand this gift, and together they try to devise a plan to win the war. So yeah, I hope I didn't really give too much away. They tell you that in the trailer and or the first 5 minutes of the movie. So right away, right away, Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt are fantastic in this movie. I mean, Cruise himself, he does play this everyman sort of character. He's very good at playing the lead character, a very likable lead character, with with uh, with some depth to him because honestly, he was one of the best parts of Oblivion, and yeah, it's a similar character here, except not as much of a blank slate because this guy is not nearly as bland of a character as the trailers for this movie advertised. He makes mistakes. He is by no means a war hero. He does start out as kind of a wimp, which actually brings me to a minor problem I have with the movie, but I'll get to that. But at the same time, you can tell he's gradually learning throughout the movie, and the way that Cruise handles this very subtle transformation into a full blown action hero toward the end is both believable and satisfying because you really do feel like this character has gone through a very visible arc, and the way they're not throwing it in your face, and b the I'm trying to think of the word. Really, the biggest thing is that they're not throwing it in your face, and also the very satisfying feeling that you get with with finally with Cruz's character finally embracing this combat side of him without necessarily having to rely on a crutch. Now, I'm trying not to spoil an event from later in the movie because honestly, you should really go see this movie. It's a pretty good sci-fi flick. Yeah, it has some minor flaws, but again, it's a very good sci-fi flick. It's a very good action flick, and what really elevates it is that it's a sci-fi flick with a brain, and we've seen plenty of those, but too often nowadays we get sci-fi action flicks that are completely brainless. I'm looking at you, Michael Bay. So, what I really, yeah, I basically covered everything I liked about Cruz's performance, and throughout the whole movie, he really handles the at times mental breakdowns that this character has. Um, I mean, he does have this kind of very manic energy about him whenever he's first starting out, trying to control this gift that he has, or trying to control this power. I mean, you really see written plain on his face that he is wondering, am I losing my mind? Was that all a dream? I mean, he honestly does not know what's going on. Um, and you really needed someone like Cruz to be able to portray that with minimal words because he really doesn't really get a whole lot of words where he's asking, okay, what's happening to me, blah 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 blah. I mean, he's just everything is written on his face. And aside from that part of his performance, he completely throws himself into the physical side of the role. He what is he, like 50, 51? And he's still doing big time action movies like this. Now, granted, I know he like any other actor is using a stunt double, but the fact that he looks the fact that he is so devoted to his craft and so eager to throw himself into the thick of these action scenes to where it looks very believable really speaks volumes to about his dedication to whatever role he's going into. I mean, like I said, he throws his entire body into this movie, and that kind of dedication you just have to admire, and I think it makes his character all the more endearing. So yeah, he's very good. Emily Blunt is also pretty good as Rita, and one joke I actually really liked. You know how I said she plays this war hero, where there are posters of her everywhere with this toting this big sword and looking all serious. It's this very embellished picture of her, and written and kind of what looks like to be painted on Full Metal Bitch. it's that was a nice touch. That was a really nice touch. But yeah, Emily Blunt is so convincing as an action lead in this that I'm left to wonder, why isn't she playing Black Widow? I know she was originally up for the part, but I don't know, had scheduling conflicts or something. I don't know what happened. But I pose this additional question to you. Why isn't she playing Sarah Connor in Terminator Genesis? Why? I mean, if anyone's a worthy successor to Linda Hamilton, it's Emily Blunt. Good God. And the way that she, again, like Tom Cruise, really puts herself through hell for this role, and the way that she differentiates this character from a lot of her other characters, like if you saw her in the Adjustment Bureau or Wild Target, then honestly you would be hard pressed to find any similarities between those characters and the character of Rita. I mean, she really got into shape for this role. I mean, she's toting these very toned arms, and she's doing these push-ups without her legs on the ground. I mean, complete arm push-ups. So yeah, she physically she's pretty dedicated, like Tom Cruise, but also you can tell not only does she is she convincing playing this very tough character, but they give this tough character a lot of depth. Not too much that it eclipses whatever is going on in the story, but just enough to where you can say, okay, well, I understand where she's coming from. I understand why her character is like this. And narratively, yeah, I understand why she is here. And the chemistry she has with Cruz, and again, her credibility in the role. I mean, the fact that she just looks so natural. I mean, she does not have to try to make herself convincing in this role. She just is. She's not trying. Or obviously she is trying, but my God, you don't need to convince me. I mean, she and Cruz are just awesome in this movie. And aside from them, the supporting cast is pretty good. The members of J Squad, although I don't really remember too much about them as characters. They're fairly memorable. I mean, when they refer to J Squad in the movie, I'm like, oh, it's those guys. Yeah. Honestly, they're kind of that's actually one issue with the characterization of this movie, is that some of the side characters don't really get as much development as the two leads. Like J Squad are basically, they're not cookie cutter, but they're being the sci-fi geek that I am. I couldn't help but draw comparisons to the characters, the Colonial Marines in Aliens, because I pointed to the chick, and originally I thought she was going to be this Vasquez clone, but no, she really wasn't. She was just kind of a, I don't know. These characters don't really get a whole lot of depth behind beneath the surface. I mean, what you see is what you get with these characters. There's not really a whole lot beneath that. And again, that's something I probably would have changed. That's probably something I would have expanded upon. And I would have done more to actually help the audience to differentiate between them. Because, yeah, I know what the movie is referring to when it says J Squad, but again, if you ask me to name Skinner, I would say, is that one of the British guys? If you were to say Kimmel or Ford, I would be like, okay, well, Ford is the black guy, right? Ford is the smarmy or the relaxed black guy. Kimmel, is he the fat one? I don't know. I may be right, I may be wrong, and that's I think an issue with the movie, is that it doesn't really do quite enough to not only differentiate the members of J Squad from each other, but also it doesn't really do enough to develop J Squad as a whole, as a set of characters in the movie. But also Brendan Gleeson is in this movie. I never really knew his name, but he does a good job. I mean, he's not quite a cookie cutter character, but at the same time, they don't really give him too much to do. But he's fine when he's there. I mean, he doesn't go over the top, not remotely, and he accomplishes what he needs to accomplish. He is very credible as whatever ranking officer that he is. And again, to my surprise, Bill Paxton is in this movie, and I actually did not know this until about a few days ago, because Bill Paxton is in none of the trailers, or at least not the ones that I saw in theaters. I haven't really followed this movie so much as I would have followed X-Men Days of Future Past, so I did not know Bill Paxton was in this movie until fairly recently. And it's kind of funny that I drew comparisons to Aliens when Bill Paxton is in this movie. He does not play Hudson. Think the character of Apone from Aliens crossed with Bill Paxton's very goofy, very over-the-top CIA agent from Two Guns. That's basically what you get with Bill Paxton as this. He's either a private or a sergeant. I want to say sergeant. Sergeant Farrell, I think his name is. But Paxton, he is so fun to watch. I mean, even in a bad movie, which this is by no means a bad movie, but even in a bad movie, Bill Paxton is fun to watch, and that very much remains the case here. I mean, yeah, you could have easily just made this a very joyless character, a very unlikable character, but the way that Bill Paxton plays it, the way he's always got this twinkle in his eye, the way he's always got this kind of smirk on his face, he's believable as this hard ass sergeant, but also he does really seem to have a sense of humor about his line of work. So yeah, I really liked Bill Paxton in this movie. He was predictably funny. And also, what I like about this movie is that it doesn't really try to overexploit or overstretch itself in terms of the content of its narrative. I mean, I've heard a lot of people compare this movie conceptually to Groundhog Day, and I can kind of see where you're coming from, but honestly, when I was watching it, I wasn't really thinking Groundhog Day so much as I was thinking Mass Effect crossed with Philip K. Dick. That's kind of the vibe I got while watching this, because honestly, it has the interesting kind of otherworldly concept of a Philip K. Dick novel, but it has a threat and a layout, a story layout kind of similar to Mass Effect, because you could easily just replace the mimics with the Reapers from Mass Effect. And Mass Effect, I know, is not the only work of fiction to do this type of man versus alien concept. It's just a recent example that I point to. But yeah, it's what I mean by not really overexerting itself in terms of its concept. Yeah, it takes the reset one's day idea, but at the same time, it also uses the mid-apocalyptic future aspect of it, because like I said, we're in the middle of an alien invasion. The humans are trying to retake the planet from the mimics, and you could have easily just made this a very messy movie if you were trying to balance these two concepts. Because honestly, one of them would be enough, and one of them is enough for a lot of Philip K. Dick stories. But the way that they play it here, they find this very perfect balance between really showcasing this idea, the Groundhog Day idea, while also never really losing perspective on the whole alien invasion thing. I mean, the aliens are always the primary objective. They tie it in pretty nicely with the whole mimic, with the whole reset your day concept. So every plot thread has a reason to be here. I mean, both of these ideas are intertwined. They're intertwined very, very well. So the way that the movie goes about these two storylines without becoming a mess is pretty impressive. The way that they were kind of able to juggle those with relative grace, or with seemingly so much grace. And another thing I have to praise are the action scenes. They're filmed very well. There's not really any shaky cam, thank God. Hopefully that's a trend that's dying down. I'm tired of shaky cam. You can always see what's going on. Yeah, there are probably going to be some comparisons drawn to World War II, because honestly, the landing at Europe did kind of scream D-Day. Because I half expected Bill Paxton to say, "Man, we're landing on the beaches of Normandy." He doesn't say that, or at least not that I can remember. But that would have seemed a little bit too on the nose, and I can easily see someone picking up on what I can only assume was intentional imagery. But to be fair, it doesn't really feel exploitative, or at least not in the way that Michael Bay exploited the Challenger explosion and the 9/11 imagery in Transformers 3. But yeah, the action scenes are pretty good. I would have liked. This has to do with the design of the aliens, because the aliens, by their very nature in this movie, are very erratic. They look like the symbiotes from Spider-Man. They're very erratic. They're moving. They're they think symbiotes from Spider-Man crossed with the monsters from Pacific Rim. Although not as big, obviously. So the aliens, by their very nature and how they're designed and how they move, I realize it would be very difficult to use practical effects for something like that. But at the same time, at several points in the movie, or not several, it never really took me out of it. But at a few points in the movie, at a few of the action scenes, I really did kind of feel like Tom Cruise and all them were just shooting a CGI. So so yeah, that got a little that got a little disappointing given how impressed I was with all the rest of the aspects of this movie. But for all of the complaining I do about the CGI when it comes to the aliens, one thing I have to give this movie credit on is the sets. I mean, every single set in this movie is memorable, from the war-torn countryside to the farm that Cruz and Blunt take refuge in, to the military base, to the city, to the beach. I mean, all of these locations and sets are memorable. They all have personality to them. And as far as I could tell, a lot of them were done practically. So yeah, the practical effects, and they even managed to blend the CGI, what CGI they used for the suits, in pretty well with the practical sets. So in terms of its special effects, I was pretty impressed with the movie overall, and special effects having become such a saturation on the movie going public, for me to be actually impressed with the effects, I think is really saying something. I don't know about you. But if there are a few minor gripes I have, is that the first part of the movie, or maybe the first 10, 15 minutes, are a little rocky in terms of storytelling and exposition, because like I said, Tom Cruise has been on the front lines. I mean, he goes up to I'm just gonna call him General Brendan Gleeson, and Gleeson basically says, "I'm putting you on the front lines in this invasion." And all of a sudden, I just thought to myself, why? What strategic purpose does this serve? Because you are looking at who is essentially the poster child for your mechanized death suits, because that's the way the movie starts. Tom Cruise is advertising these suits, and he says, "Oh, Emily Blunt over there, Rita, she's already killed 100 of these things with this suit." And he's basically doing his job as a member of media relations. So putting him on the front lines doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I was just waiting for him to ask why, because I was asking why, and they never really answer it. Really, the only thing that we could speculate is that they felt like he wasn't really doing his part as a member of the human race, as a member of the military. And I guess putting a member of the military, or at least the media relations branch of the military, into direct combat would be more acceptable than just drafting a civilian. I don't know. That's just speculation. They never really make that too clear. Maybe they did provide a hand-wave explanation, but I must not have caught it if they did. But also, going back to my Philip K. Dick comparison, the difference between something like this and something like Minority Report is that another Tom Cruise movie. The difference between something like this and something like a Philip K. Dick story like Minority Report is that in Minority Report, some interesting questions were raised. I mean, in this movie, you have this interesting idea of being essentially able to go back in time every time you die, but not really any kind of questions are raised about that. I mean, Minority Report, you had Colin Farrell come in and basically said, how do we have any right to arrest these guys if they technically haven't done anything wrong? If you have questions, just look it up. I'm not going to explain Minority Report. It's too difficult, um, or at least it's too difficult to explain shorthanded. So, so you had that, and then Tom Cruise would basically be like, Tom Cruise would basically reply, when I rolled this ball over to you and you caught it before it fell off the table, why did you catch it? And Farrell's like, because it was going to fall. And Cruise is like, but it didn't fall. You caught it. However, the fact that you prevented it from hitting the floor does not change the fact that it was going to hit the floor. So interesting conversations like that are really what's missing from this movie, in my opinion, because this movie just takes this interesting idea, and we kind of get hints of the ethical ramifications of this idea and having this ability, but we never really get any. We never really go in depth. If anything, it's more hinted at and more conveyed with Cruise's excellent performance. And to be honest, it does lead to some pretty good comedy. I mean, I really like this movie's dark sense of humor. I always enjoy gallows humor if it's done well, and it is done well here. But like I said, I really think you could have raised some interesting questions with this idea. And I understand they're in a war zone; you can't really ask the questions there. But I was just waiting for something like, having this ability, we're essentially playing God, or how would this affect human relationships, where one would have this perception of having known this person for a really long time, and another person having just met said person, having just met the other. So yeah, conversations like that I think would have really elevated this movie above your typical popcorn fare, even more than it already is. But as it stands, the idea wasn't wasted. I mean, I still had a pretty good time, and they do utilize the idea well. They do tie it into the story very well. The acting is very good. The action scenes are exciting. The characters are fairly memorable. I really got into this. I really got into the setting. I like a lot of the sets. I like the very gritty aesthetic they gave everything. And yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of complaints. I mean, the pacing is pretty good. I can't really think of many scenes that could have been cut out. I can't really think of any time this movie dragged. This movie is paced very well. I was never really bored. So yeah, Edge of Tomorrow, go see it. It's a very good movie, and if anything, I'm kind of underselling it because these minor gripes, like wanting to see more ethical questions raised, and maybe some minor flaws in setting up the conflict in the beginning, that does very little to dampen the positive impression that I had coming out of this. Because, like I said, all those positives that I named before, they far outweigh the negatives. So, yeah, that'll be about it for Edge of Tomorrow. Do yourself a favor and go see it today. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was a horrible joke that I hope never to emulate.